Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Guesty virtual meetup. Today, we'll be talking about how to capitalize on new travel personas. I'm Verda Schwartz, President and CEO of Guesty. Before we begin, a few reminders. Be sure to grant all necessary audio permissions so you can hear us. Remember that we cannot hear you. However, you're welcome to submit questions all along the panel by clicking on the Q&A box at the bottom of the page and typing your questions and clicking submit. There will be a recording of the event shared via email for later access, and we look forward to hearing any questions throughout this event. And now I'm privileged and happy to welcome our panelists today. Carla Brooklyn, Global VP of Enterprise at SiteMinder, is with us today, as well as Maura Blumen, Product Team Lead of Guesty. Thank you both for being here and joining us.
Thank you.
Happy to be here.
Wonderful. A few opening remarks from me. I want to start with sharing our data, which shows a lot of promise for the ecosystem going forward. We've compared the current season's booking volumes, and when we're talking about end of summer, meaning August and September, and compare data, we see that US is 122% higher than 2020. And if you're wondering about pre-COVID days, it's still 48% higher than 19. So definitely an uptick in reservations. Same goes for UK, 191% higher than 2020 in bookings and 18% higher than 2019 numbers. So great numbers there showing the uptick of our industry. Australia is a different story, as you're well aware. It's currently kind of blocked from the outside world, which is a reason for domestic travel to be booming with a 40% uptick compared to pre-COVID days. Not only that, consumers are actually willing to pay more per reservation. And I think it goes without saying that if we see an uptick in demand and supply growing not at the same pace, it's only natural that there'll be less inventory available and pricing will be going up. When we look at average nightly rates in the US, we saw rates going as high as 33% higher compared to 2020. And again, it's 48% higher compared to pre-COVID days of 2019. UK is 19% higher compared to 2020 and very similar to the comparison to 2019, 20% higher than 2019. And Australia, we spoke about the fact that it's a lot of domestic travel, limited space, and a captive audience, 83% higher compared to pre-COVID days. Also, when looking at this holiday season, we see a lot of promise. I do want to caution that we expect to see fluctuations as new variants may arise and flu season coming in. Those could definitely impact numbers going forward. But when we're looking at the reservation volume for the holidays today and comparing it to the same time in 2020 and 19, we see Thanksgiving in the US 81% higher than 2020 and 26% higher than 2019. And when we look at Christmas booking volume in the US, it's 58% higher than 2020 and 82% higher than 2019. And in the UK, a staggering 480% higher than 2020. But as you can see, it's not much higher than 2019, which means that the UK has been hit quite hard last year during the holiday season. And who's making all these bookings, you might be asking yourselves. We've seen a lot of new travel personas emerge during the past year and a half with COVID really changing the way people travel. And some of those people that are looking for a different type of travel experience include displaced and stranded travelers that, changed their plans as a result of COVID. We'll talk a lot about the digital nomads of the world who crave a change of scenery and connectivity. I think that we spoke in recent events about digital nomads 2.0, a new travel persona that became very popular these days. If it used to be a small group of millennials that want to work and travel from anywhere, now everybody wants to work and travel from anywhere, and we'll talk some more about that. We see cityscapers heading to rural areas, wanting to have more space and more place to work and enjoy life. Quarantine, healthcare, and frontline workers, families seeking out more space. If you think of a family living in a small apartment in the city, why don't you go out from the city, have a nice big space with a backyard where everybody can work and join Zoom sessions whenever they like. And we also seen luxury travelers try a new way of traveling, which we didn't see before. So hotel travelers that tried short-term rental accommodations for the first time, and what we call life shoppers, because COVID was a great time for a lot of people to try to find a new place that would accommodate their needs. So for example, if you can now work from anywhere, it's a good opportunity to try out a new city or a new lifestyle, or go try country life, because you can now afford to do that and see how it works for you. So for all those reasons, we've seen a lot of change, not only in demand, but also in the type of personas that are booking that demand. I think it's clear to everyone that alternative accommodation has really become the first way to travel for a lot of travelers this year, and in a way has went from being a sidekick to the hotel industry to really going mainstream. Some of the reasons we see for that is the fact that short-term rentals offer the comfort of home away from home, have all the amenities for longer stay, such as full stacked kitchens and washer dryer, larger closets, backyards, and so on. They allow a tech-forward, contact-free experience. A lot of people now, when they travel, they actually don't want to meet anyone. They don't want to go to the reception. They don't want to have a joint elevator. And they enjoyed experimenting with digital travel accommodation. And a lot of our customers have seen that all of a sudden you're not marketing a lodging experience, you're marketing a lifestyle experience. Okay, people are looking for unique amenities, unique lodging experiences. It could be a castle, a cabin, a tent, a glorified tent, and so on and so forth. Data is very promising regarding the future of short-term stays. And global spend on short-term rentals in 2022 is expected to exceed $200 billion, making up more than 15% of the global lodging market, and growing at a pace that is twice as high as the traditional accommodation market. So definitely a lot for our clients to expect. And what we recommend, trying to summarize everything I said regarding the new travel personas and their need, is that you should cater to them in a smart way. That means really leverage the contact-free or light touch accommodations. Keyless entry system has become, very popular, again, with travelers not wanting to meet anyone when they come into the property, and it allows your business to scale with a leaner team. Digital concierges, smart thermostats, and other smart home automation tools are very helpful in that respect. We also recommend highlighting flexible cancellation policies. A lot of travelers are still concerned and unsure of what the future holds, what the holiday season holds, what new variants can they uncover, and as a result of that, want to have the flexibility to change their travel plans last minute. I already mentioned longer stay amenities, such as full kitchen, outdoor space, bigger closets, and so on and so forth. And also remember that people are looking for lifestyle and special experiences. Think how to make them feel that they're living like a local, that they're in touch with the local communities. What kind of virtual tours or travel guides can you provide them? And what kind of experiences can you highlight in your neighborhood? So those are all our recommendations to cater to those new personas. And now I would like to present Guesty in a few words and explain how we would help you take advantage of the surge in travel that we've mentioned. So with that anticipated surge in reservations, it is important to ensure that all your operations are running smoothly so you can capitalize on the growing demand. And this is exactly what Guesty does. We're a platform that is an end-to-end solution for automating and streamlining the complex operational needs accompanying flexible inventory management, enable you to manage bookings across multiple channels, and we'll touch more upon that, especially with SiteMinder, and of course, help with your listing distribution, staff management, report creation, and guest communication, as well as a lot of other tools. You can see a little about us in this slide. And I would also like to mention our marketplace. So in addition to the robust software offering of the Guesty platform, we are connected to almost 100 different partners that allow us to expand our reach and the offering to our customers even further, allowing you to manage everything from the Guesty dashboard. And of course, one of those important partners is SiteMinder that is with us today that allows you to have a direct access to the SiteMinder GDS system and others. And we will touch a little more upon this in a minute. And with me today, as I mentioned, is Carla Brooklyn, Global VP of Enterprise at SiteMinder. And before I hand it over to Carla, I would like to speak for just a few minutes about the integration of SiteMinder and Guesty to give you more color on that. So in our DNA, Guesty used to service only short-term urban rentals. And as the ecosystem expanded and the personas expanded, we found ourselves catering to the needs of a lot of other types of inventory, whether it's vacation rentals, apart hotels, service apartments, and so on. Back then, there was a clear separation between the hotel industry and the short-term rental industry. So usually we didn't find our customers in the short-term industry looking for hotel distribution channels. It wasn't popular at all. We also didn't see hotels looking for short-term rental operational needs because they were, more traditional hotels operating in a traditional way. So we did have that separation at the time. But that changed with, I see a lot of blur today between the hotel industry and the short-term rental industry. What is an apart hotel? You may ask yourself, what is a service department? Is it a hotel? Is it a short-term rental? And this is really what led to our partnership with SiteMinder. So what our partnership has done is really take the traditional hotel channel management solutions and make it available for the short-term rental inventory with the convenience and seamlessness of an API connection. So because Guesty already had the complex and multi-unit solutions via API, we can now connect to SiteMinder seamlessly and give the ability for any property manager to connect to SiteMinder and have all their inventory connect to the classic hotel distribution without compromising on the Guesty operational tools. So to give you specifically what it means that Guesty can provide hotel-like listings with traditional hotel distribution via SiteMinder on the one hand, and allowing to diversify the SiteMinder inventory on the other hand. It also means that SiteMinder can provide tech-enabled automation and operationalization tools for more classic hotels seeking that flexibility in platform. Then we can also help facilitate the seamless onboardings via API, something that traditional hotels didn't think about in the past. And one more thing we would like to highlight is pricing strategies that complement both short-term rentals and hotels. So now we'll see a lot more unity between the two solutions and between the different needs. And a lot of the inventory really cannot be classified as one or the other. And we need to have that joint solution that Guesty and SiteMinder do offer together. I also think that for SiteMinder, it gives them a window to the booming short-term industry, which wasn't an area of focus for them in the past. And I'm sure Carla can tell us that going forward, they felt they couldn't ignore it, and it has become an important part of the travel industry. So to sum it up in one sentence, I think this partnership is a wonderful win-win, both to Guesty, to SiteMinder, and of course, most importantly, to our property managers, that at the end of the day, all this is done to help you scale your business. And with that, I would like to hand it over to Carla Brooklyn to tell us about SiteMinder and her tips and tricks for our property managers.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Vered. And you probably saw me frantically scribbling in the background there with some of those persona names, because there are certainly persona names that I feel resonate with myself. But the problem was I couldn't find one persona that fitted me. And I think that's one of the most complex parts of it, isn't it? One day I'm a cityscaper, the next minute I'm a luxury traveler, and I'm certainly craving to be a digital nomad again. So I think one of the things that makes this environment so complex is that, first of all, you have to define the personas, then you have to define the people who are traveling as part of those personas. And then the really tough part for the hoteliers out there is then acquiring those customers and curating their experience. So thank you so much for the introduction there. And yes, we're super excited to be partnering with Guesty, and we see so much value from our side, and particularly with our connections out to the different suppliers as well. So with that, there's always that obligatory first slide that tries to tell you everything that I've done in my career. I love the way we stop at 20 years because we don't want anybody else to know that we've been in the career any longer than 20 years. But I think the most important thing you need to know about me is I'm incredibly passionate about the hospitality space. I was born and raised in a hotel. I think at the age of 10 or 11, I gladly took on the responsibility of front of house manager when somebody didn't turn up to work and my mum made me do it. But what that really did is it gave me this passion that's never left me for hospitality. So I've definitely done my time in hotels, at hotel groups and chains, but certainly spent a lot of my career in technology. So working for some of the large OTAs as well as the smaller ones, wholesalers, a stint at one of the big GDSs, and really excited to be with SiteMinder now for 2 years. And I think SiteMinder is such a great fit for me in my career because they're so equally as passionate about hospitality as I am. So I'm really happy to now be at SiteMinder and share that relationship. So before I go into the tips and tricks as Carla sees the world, and we've kind of looked out and we've spoken to hoteliers and we've seen what's happening in the market, what I wanted to do first was just take a small step back, because whilst it's a fundamental, I think sometimes when we are so busy day to day, we sometimes forget some of the basics. So the first thing we always want to do when we're starting to look at how we capitalize on personas and really start to generate revenue from the different segments that are applicable for our spaces, we have to look at data. Now, there are so many sources of data in the industry at the moment, and sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming. I think if I was to give you one tip when it comes to data is don't take it for granted, and certainly do one little scratch deeper to try and understand what that number means. We've got a variety of different numbers on the screen here, and there's a link that can be sent out afterwards to you guys. But here at SiteMinder, we created an environment called the World Hotel Index, which was to provide the industry publicly information to booking data. If we were to just kind of pick on one of the data points there, which was the UK number. So what it's suggesting there is we're back at 85% of our revenue numbers pre-COVID. Great number. That's a wonderful number. I think 85 is a great number, but 85 is just a number. I think what we have to do is really start to understand what that number means, what's the demand generation behind that number, and how do we start to attract and curate an environment. And I'm going to talk about that a lot. It's about acquiring the customers in those personas, but you're never going to keep those personas unless you're curating an environment they want to stay in and come back to as well. So in addition to data, what we feel is important here at SiteMinder is that you understand how those travelers are behaving. So what we did as a bit of a complementer to the World Hotel Index was we created a Change in Traveller report, which again, we'll send out the link to everybody here today. And what we've done is we've pulled out some key countries, and what we've done is we've done a real deep dive into consumer behaviour. So we've looked pre-stay, and we've looked at how they are aspiring to travel. How are they looking at travel? How are they even planning for travel before they start to even enter into that purchasing cycle? So then looking at the pre-booking capabilities, how they buy ancillaries, how they then travel through their journey, and what's their post experience and loyalty coming out of that as well. And I think that is where you start to understand what are the personas that are right for your business, what are the personas that are driving demand, and how do you really start to apply your strategies and the techniques and the tactics within your business to generate that demand and to meet the requirements of those customers. Because I think sometimes we look at data and we forget that somewhere behind that number, there's a person that's traveling. And that's the reason why we're all in hospitality, isn't it? It's to serve those customers and to curate those experiences. So without further ado, let's go into those long-awaited tips and tricks. We're going to talk about 4, so I won't keep you for very long, but we do have some great time at the end of this session to take any questions that you guys have. So really happy to expand on anything we talk around over the next 4 tips. And also if there's any other questions that you guys have, then we can pick that up in the Q&A session at the end. So if I could hear anybody, I could hear the groan. Domestic. Carla, yes, we know domestic is important. Everybody talks about domestic. We know domestic is driving our business today. But I do want us to stop for a second, because I do think as an industry, we take business for granted. We have been incredibly lucky that as the restrictions have started to release, we have been able to see domestic travel happen, particularly amongst leisure guests. But domestic travel is not just around staycations. It's not just around European summer with families traveling. It's not just around us taking those long-awaited trips for family and friends. It is about corporate business as well, and it's about other personas. So last week, any of you have probably seen there's been a huge amount of press that came out from the International Hotel Investment Forum that happened last week. One of the big hoteliers, and typically they kind of set a trend for what's happening in the industry. A core CEO kind of coined a phrase, hyper-local corporate business. I really love that phrase, and I love what it means. It means really take a step outside of your door, have a look at the businesses that are around you, and really start to understand, are they the right businesses that could be driving revenue for you and your properties and your spaces? Because let's be honest, not all of the properties we have are just bedrooms, and we need to make sure that we're optimizing on that space. So I think tip number 1 is, take a step outside, leave that office, leave that space, take a walk around your local area and really try to understand how you can capitalize on that really hyper-local business. But don't think around it as just the person with the suitcase, and the slide is a little misleading. It's not just that person with the suitcase, it's not just overnight stays, it's how can you utilize the space that you have at your disposal to really use it to drive revenue. So is there space for meeting rooms, co-working space? That could be transit business that's not overnight stays. So really think creatively around that space. And I think as an industry, we've had to do that over the last 18 months. We've had to now think more creatively around how we drive revenue. Digital nomads is one of my favorite terms. I was a digital nomad for about 18 months, nearly 2 years. I gave it up because it's really hard work. It is really hard work being a digital nomad because it's an industry we're not used to catering for. This is the main point. If you think around digital nomads and you see pictures of digital nomads, you see glamorous people sat on a beach, sunning themselves whilst designing wonderful curated experiences or doing some different project work. Being a digital nomad actually comes with a lot of problem statements that us in the hospitality industry need to solve. So I had a constant fear when I was traveling. Is my Wi-Fi bandwidth going to be fast enough? Am I even going to be able to do this webinar like I am today? Is it safe and secure? Is someone going to steal all my email data whilst I'm online? Is there somewhere that I can get coffee and a healthy breakfast? Because quite frankly, if I don't eat or have coffee, I'm not going to function as let alone a digital nomad. And then, you know, finally, you think around just the other lifestyle choices you make around working out, having a safe place to stay. Where do you leave your laptop if you need to go into the restroom? All of that really basic stuff. So I think the final point here for me is think about the space that you have. And if you really want to pursue a persona like digital nomads, which is an incredible persona to have as part of your business profile, really think around how you cater for them. Do it. My number one tip is do it. Go to your property, go to your space, try and work from there for 2 or 3 days. If you cannot do it well, it means you're not going to be able to service this customer segment. So there, domestic isn't that boring. Let's move a little bit on to, and there's a bit of a theme actually in the next 4. It's kind of touching a little bit on the corporate space. Think about the right industry. So the corporate industry was such a fundamental industry for us in hospitality pre-COVID. And I think we think now it's not coming back, it's really far away, the numbers aren't coherent on if it's coming back or when it's coming back. I think we need to think differently around it. I think there are still people traveling for business. And I think the 3 that I've identified and I see traveling today are kind of the 3 on the screen. So my hints and tips are there are industries that will always travel. They have to travel. They have to travel to sustain our economies, to sustain our countries, to sustain our industries. There are great stories in the industry around how alternative accommodation and those short stay rentals have really optimized on industries like oil and gas for those long stays. Because let's take it, let's be real about it. The oil and gas industry will always have to travel. We have to service that industry. The other one is construction. There's that great piece around in the US, the motel industry in the mid-market segment in those middle states saw a real boom in their occupancy because of all the construction workers that were transient. So there are industries out there that will always be ready to travel. Just invest some time in understanding who they are and how you access them. The other, we start at the low end and those poor construction workers that are staying in motels and they're on the road all the time. It's the other end. It's all our bosses. It's the CEOs and the owners of all these businesses. They always travel, right? And they're not always on a private plane. But these guys need to travel because they are running large conglomerates. So there's an executive level of travel that will always travel. So be close to those executive PAs, be close to those businesses, because you need to understand where that business is coming from. If you have properties that can service that executive level, really continue to pursue it. The last piece, which is really interesting, which is kind of a parallel industry, or kind of segment, not necessarily an industry, is that small and medium enterprise space. Anybody that works in a small business knows the importance of selling and holding relationships in person. We do business one-to-one, face-to-face. If you're in a large business and you have a large brand, you can kind of do it all day long via Zoom. But there are some industries, particularly in the smaller space, where you just have to go and see your customers. And that is the space that has started to travel again. The last thing I would say is just get it right. And what I mean by that, and I'm trying not to be obnoxious, is in the leisure space, when I travel for leisure, I think I'm a little bit pickier. When I travel for corporate, I've got a little bit more of an understanding of how hard it is to run a hotel. But I'm much more loyal as a business travel than I am as a leisure traveler. So if corporate travel is loyal, make sure you're serving their needs, because they are going to come back and spend that money with you. So we've talked about some of the customers. Let's just talk around how you're actually going to find them. So new personas means I'm probably going to find new ways of booking. So all the traditional ways that you were acquiring customers previously, you can kind of throw them out of the window to some extent, because you now need to look differently at how you're acquiring customers. The most prominent part that I've seen happen over the last 18 months is that huge rise in alternative accommodation or long stay rentals. No longer is this somebody who is working in construction that needs to be on site for 6 or 8 weeks. This is, I'm traveling for 1 week for work and I just need space and comfort that doesn't look like a small hotel room with brown carpet. I need an inspiring and an exciting space to work in. What's also driven this is there's been so many leisure travelers that are now using that segment for their own leisure travel. They think it's great that they've now experienced it, they use it for their business travel. And then there's that awful term, which it's a term I'm not great at talking about, but it's bleisure, and it's a word I don't really like, but we can't ignore it. Bleisure, where you're blending that leisure and that business travel together, particularly where you now don't have to work from an office. You can work from anywhere in the world as long as your company permits it. Take your children, they can work online as well. So now you've got the ability to just take your whole family away with you if you choose to go on your business trip. And the final piece of the puzzle there is direct versus indirect. We know it's very hard curating a distribution strategy. What we see often happen at times of distress is hoteliers shut down. They try and bank on the things that they know for certain, but we've learned over the last 18 months that just doesn't happen. So I think my last tip there, and it's not because I work for SiteMinder, it really is because of the experience I've had over a number of years, is when you get to a point where your inventory is distressed and your demand is low, open up those channels, because your voice is so small. Even if you're a part of a big brand, you need the voice of all those other channels. Now, often we see them as competitors. I think what we need to do is just see them as an extension of our marketing funnel. And they're just giving us more voices in market. We need to do it at the right price, in the right way. But distribution becomes incredibly important at driving the personas that you need through the right demand channels. Final piece of the puzzle, and this one's really quick. If we think back previously to how business travelers were booking, your procurement manager in your office or your travel manager would have a TMC. Your TMC would book through the GDS, and your GDS would have your negotiated rate that was negotiated about 12 months ago. Perfect. The system was unflawed, wasn't it? I say that with sarcasm. That kind of industry now is starting to look slightly different. We have a space where corporations are saying, we're not really traveling as much as we previously used to. Do we need a TMC? So they're starting to look at, how do we book via other channels? So there's those self-booking tools and those corporate booking tools that are now not necessarily facilitated by those big TMCs, or they're using those channels like a booking.com or Expedia to make their reservations. On the flip side of that, though, you've got companies who maybe didn't use a TMC previously, who are now so conscious around the well-being of their employees when they are traveling, they want to build in that compliance element. So they want to use TMCs to do it. What I would say is, whether or not it's a TMC discussion, a business discussion, a corporation discussion, or it's a restaurant up the road, start the conversations now. And let's not forget the fundamentals of why we're in this business. It's to serve customers and to show them what hospitality is. Let's go back to an environment where we do invite guests in, give them drinks, show them the properties, really show off what we do as a business, because I think we might have lost ourselves a little bit over the last couple of years, and it's really time to take back control of that environment and that curation. So that's me. I'm really happy to be a part of today's session, but I am going to pass back to Vered, and then I think we're doing some Q&A at the end, but between now and then we've got some more exciting stuff to happen. So I'll pass back.
Thank you, Carla, for this enlightening presentation. And now I would like to pass the torch to Maor, who will tell us about the integration and how it can help your business.
All right. So thank you, Vera. Thank you, Carla. I think I found my new favorite word, bleisure. All right. This is a new one for me. So thank you for that. So hi. First, we know that Guesty is all about creating the logical flow for you to manage your properties and optimize your occupancy, right? So we usually start by uploading your properties, usually. And that can include a complex, like we do with SiteMinder, of course. Complex represent a hotel, for example, or apart hotels, boutique hotels, all of the items that Vera talked about earlier. We do multi-units, sometimes called unit types or room types. And you think of them as your standard room or deluxe rooms in your hotels. These are multi-units, up to the individual units and room 101, 102, all right? When you show all of these items in Guesty. So in this screen here, you can see on the top left, for example, this is a complex. This could be an apartment or a hotel. Underneath, you can see there are different multi-units, like the empty penthouse and the empty one bedroom. And you can expand each of these multi-units to see the individual units themselves. So this is an overall, like a hotel management page. And this is how it looks in Guesty. So this was quite improved in the recent bits. So it's now easier to travel and to navigate between the different units here on the same hotel. So this is something that was very, very useful for our customers. And now I want to focus a bit on the multi-unit features. So you know that for channels like Airbnb, Booking.com, Expedia, and of course SiteMinder, connecting directly into multi-units. But even on channels that do not have the feature of multi-units directly on them, like for example, Agoda or TripAdvisor, you can still manage these as multi-units from Guesty. You just connect the units directly to the channel, but you're able to manage them in a bulk. For example, if you need to do bulk operations from within Guesty, and this is very, very efficient for our customers. And what we show here is now Guesty has, of course, the booking engine. Booking engine in Guesty consists of the API if you want to create a website yourself, or the Guesty booking website if you want it. It's a beautiful website that you can easily set it up. And now we also support multi-units on both of them. So for example, in these two screenshots from our website, on the before, the multi-unit was shown as different, like duplicated items, duplicated rooms. And then after we show it, we consolidate it to a single room that you can book several times. So when a guest searches, you're using our booking website, it gets to this specific result, and it's very clear, and you can book it, and you can book it several times, and only when it's fully booked, it disappears from the booking website. And now for my personal favorite, this is the multi-calendar on the Guesty platform. And I think I love this page so much is because when you go to this page, it's very easy to gauge the pulse of your business. You go, you see the number of reservations that you have for the next week, 2 weeks, months. You can really see what's going on in your business at a glance. And as you can see here, the green stripes are your upcoming reservations, and you can see the different icons that come from different channels, right? You can click on each of these reservations and have more information and manage these reservations. So this is really a one-stop shop page within Guesty. And just to get your attention on the left side, again, it looks pretty similar to what we've seen earlier on the hotel management page. So you can see here a multi-unit that is collapsed to show all the individual units or rooms that's underneath. You see room 101 or 102. And now all the rooms are nested under it. And now we know that when you advertise your standard room, for example, and a guest books that standard room, it books one of these 15 subunits, right? And you need to assign the reservation to any of the subunits per your choice. And you need to keep in mind that you want to optimize your occupancy. You want to leave no orphan nights or gap nights in between. So Guesty had a feature that should help you with that. And this feature is the assignment, the different assignment options. We have 3 assignment options. One of them is automatically assign a reservation to a room right when it's confirmed. So you don't want to manually change it. You just, as the reservation is confirmed, it will automatically assign it to a specific room. And the second one, which customers love, is you will automatically assign this room a few days before the check-in. And you can select which the number, for example, a couple of days before check-in, you want to lock this reservation onto a room. And the third one that I've seen someone else really love is the ability to manually control this process. They go and on the morning of or the night before, they just go see what check-ins they have for the next morning, and then they assign them, they optimize the occupancy. We call it playing the Tetris because you really want to leave as little gap nights as possible. And for them, we created this beautiful feature that you can see on the screen. On the right side, there's the list of all unassigned reservations that they need to do. In this example, they have one for Leanne. And then when you click on it, it suggests a room that fits for this specific reservation. So in this case, room 102. So, and then you can click save, and that's it. It is assigned and ready for the check-in. And the last but not least, I think, Carla and Vera talked about it, that some people, you don't want to have a crowded front desk at your hotel, all the people signing the forms for the check-in forms and the agreements and such. So we have a few pre-stay tools here at Guesty that helps that to automate, and have a contactless check-in process. One of them is the check-in form, as you can see here on the left, that help you collect the guest information, verify that the details on the reservation are indeed correct, and prepare for the upcoming stay. And of course, this can be sent over email and be ready before the check-in. And the second item is the rental agreement. So, every hotel, every room may have different rental agreements. It depends on what it contains. So you can send to your guest a personalized agreement and collect their verified and secured e-signature that will help you prevent cases of like fraud, damage, or unwanted guest behaviors, because we collect their e-signature and all the agreements and the conditions are there. So these were just a few snippets of our features in Guesty, and I hope you got a bit of the logical flow that we think, and there are many more items that you can play with in Guesty that will help you work effectively and efficiently on your day-to-day. So thank you, and back at you, Vered.
Thank you, Moore, for taking us through those features. I would like to move forward to the Q&A session with Carla and with Moore. And if you have additional questions, feel free to submit them now, and we'll continue to look at those questions and see how we can help address those. And Carla, I'd like to start with a question to you. I spoke about the fact that those worlds of short-term rentals and hotels were completely separated and really started merging in the past couple of years. Did you ever imagine that, SiteMinder would be a good fit for short-term rentals? And I would love to hear your perspective on that merge that you're seeing.
Yeah, so even before I was at SiteMinder, I was confused why we were dealing with the segments differently. So I come from a business where prior to SiteMinder in an accommodation brand where there was a mix of accommodation. So it was kind of hostels, long-term rentals, hotels. And it was so frustrating for me because I had to buy multiple systems. I couldn't figure out where I could or not distribute all of this different content and inventory. So when I came into SiteMinder and saw that they were establishing relationships with businesses like yourself there at Guesty, actually kind of warmed my heart a little bit, because I thought it's just going to bring so much more efficiency to those hotel groups, those lifestyle brands who are no longer just dealing in hotel rooms. So that was probably the first thing that really was a good indicator for me that we were moving in a more positive direction from an industry perspective. I think on the reverse, though, from a vacation rental or alternative accommodation perspective, I think we just couldn't ignore it any longer. I think there was a demand that was being driven by travelers. The demand was outweighing how we could provide supply to customers who were trying to acquire it. There was no way that people could keep ignoring it anymore. So I am really pleased that now it feels a little bit more mainstream, that there's just a single pool of experiences and accommodation that people can choose from. So did I envisage it was going to happen? I thought, well, it has to. We've got no choice.
Wonderful. Another question for you is, I think that we're seeing more and more hoteliers adopting technology these days to help them scale and organize their business. And I think I also spoke to the fact that with short-term rentals, maybe came a little sooner than the classic hotel industry, but now we see more and more technology adoption there as well. But we still see some holdback, and I wonder if you have an opinion about that. What is holding some of the hotel managers back from making the change to their business?
It's so hard because I think one of the frustrations I have is probably as an industry, we don't move fast enough sometimes. And that is really where we should have looked at that alternative accommodations, short stay, vacation rental stay space and say, let's learn from them. I think the reason why it probably emerged in that space first is because you didn't necessarily have people in places to do that check-in. So they had to lean on technology because there's no way that you could run around multiple units checking people in. You had to find a way through technology to service. I think that's probably problem statement number one, is there is a fear factor around, are you taking people's jobs away with technology? And we talk about it so much in the technology industry, and we know there are solid reasons why technology is not going to take people's jobs away. It's more around creating an environment where you're taking the mundaneness out of jobs and really having people focused on those revenue generating activities rather than just the basic tasks of checking somebody in. Or if the check-in process is automated, how do you create an experience alongside it that adds value to the check-in experience rather than just the form filling, which Bior was saying before there. I think the other two things, though, is balancing value. We're in an environment where every dollar, every pound, every euro is being assessed. So investment in technology is just seen as a cost, and not necessarily do they do the right level of analysis to say, what capacity do we save by using technology? And then what do we gain in terms of revenue by focusing on other tasks? But I think fundamentally we're humans. Change management is hard. Every time we go through a moment of change, it's hard psychologically for us to adapt to that, particularly if we've been in properties for a long time. So that's what I would say. I think being clear around the value, fear of the change, and fear around, the replacement of staff are the three of the things I think we commonly see. And I think we need to take a consultative role as technology providers to help overcome those.
I completely agree. And I think in a sense, sometimes I get to tell that to clients, is that it's about explaining and communicating to your staff that it would actually enable their work to become more interesting, to focus on what's important and to take those, the type of the work that they really don't want to do and take that part away and actually make their day-to-day more interesting and fun. So that's another point to think about. And more, I would like to get your perspective from your technology, mind. What would be, in your view, the main advantage of using SiteMinder specifically via Guesty? If you can try to explain that to our audience.
So I think really we touched on it earlier, and that's the unique sauce, because while Guesty connects directly with the main channels like Airbnb, Booking.com, I think, once you're connected to these and you want to expand even further, and that's what Carla also said, right? You want to expand into more hotel channels. So like TripAdvisor hotels, Ctrip, Hotel Tenant, these are, this also caters like different personas, right? The same person who would go to Hotel Tonight is not necessarily the person who go to Ctrip. And of course the GDS. So I think it's really expanding the connection with all these different channels. That's the unique, I think that's the uniqueness and the great value, that with a few clicks and just with a few clicks, you can sync your availability to all these channels, calendars, and the rates, and then just start getting reservations out of dozens of channels.
And if I could add to that, sorry, I think, Neil, what's so interesting though around, having technology in place between someone like a Guesty and a SiteMinder, or particularly just having Guesty in place, is that you've got now full flexibility to pivot your strategy day to day, hour to hour. If you decide in the morning you want to go and distribute to 30 channels, you can do that. If you if you pick up immensely over the next 12 hours and you don't have that capacity anymore and you've solved out the inventory, just shut them down. You know, you're not tied into strategic decisions for months and months and months. The technology gives you the flexibility to make those changes hour by hour, minute by minute. And I think it's just an incredible flexibility that we've not always had in our industry.
Yes, it's essentially in the availability and the pricing. I mean, that's amazing, and our customers really take advantage of it. And it's beautiful to see those success stories.
It's funny. I remember that people used to change their rates, for example, you know, once in a season.
Yeah.
Think way back. It's like, okay, it's winter season, I'll change my price. Now they can change it every hour, right? They can do a lot of things that, you know, no one imagined they would do in the past. So everything has become so much more dynamic. And Carla, as the world gains more confidence surrounding travel, and we've seen it in the data I shared earlier, and even as we navigate new strains, have you noticed any particular changes that your audience, that the hoteliers need to keep in mind with regards to amenities that consumers are mostly commonly searching for, or any other particular highlight that they should note when choosing accommodation?
Yeah, I think I spoke about a few of them during the session. The thing is, and I think I kind of pull from my experience of the things that frustrate me, because I feel like if they're frustrating me, they're probably frustrating a few other people. You know, the ability to understand Wi-Fi. So you go onto a hotel listing and you'll look at a website and you'll see Wi-Fi is ticked, great, but Wi-Fi comes in a whole different range of capabilities. Are you going to be able to look at your emails, or are you going to be able to watch Netflix or do a video conference? So I think the ability to give more information around your amenities. How fast is your Wi-Fi? Do you provide a coffee machine with unlimited coffee? Do you accept, you know, Uber Eats delivery or Just Eat deliveries to your properties? What is the security and safety like at your properties? Because as a single traveler, safety and security is a really big thing for me. And also I kind of need to understand better as to where that property is and what's around me. So can I pop out and walk? Am I walking distance to a bar, a restaurant, you know, a supermarket? So not only just what's in your property, but what's around your property, because that's how I make buying decisions. But I think the things that are really important are some of those amenity things, but also it's cancellation policy. And I know we hear it every day. I'm actively looking for cancellation policy. If someone is going to try and make me prepay for a stay, for the entire stay on a non-refundable cancellation policy, they're not going to get my business.
Yeah, especially now.
Yeah.
Do you also see a greater request for traveling with pets?
So not so much so domestically, yes. Obviously, the international market hasn't quite returned yet. I think one of the things that is really hard, though, is again understanding the acceptance of do you accept pets? Do you not accept pets? What pets do you accept? Is it just a snake, or will you accept a horse? Like, it's what pets are you accepting?
Do you want to tell us something? Do you usually travel with your horse?
I normally travel off my horse with my snake. So I want to know if you've got horse parking rather than car parking. But no, but I think it goes back to the point that Mio, you were saying earlier. We don't want to speak. I don't want to speak to a person on the phone. I don't want to have to call a property and wait for 3 hours for somebody to pick up the phone, because we've got a staffing crisis in hospitality and no one's working. I want to just know, should I book it? Should I not book it? Is it going to meet my needs or not? So I think the more comprehensive nature at which that content is delivered, the more conversion you're going to get to your property, or the right conversion. Because the worst thing you want is a guest turning up with the wrong expectations. The worst experience you can have.
Yeah.
I don't think we can end this session without, you know, mentioning COVID one more time. This was an unprecedented year or year and a half for our industry. And when you try to look back, what would you think is, or what were your company efforts that you're most proud of in terms of helping the travel ecosystem navigate this unique period?
So I'm really proud. So from a SiteMinder perspective, I'm incredibly proud of what we did to support the hoteliers and the partners that we were working with. but I'm probably even more proud around what we did for the people in hospitality and just general people and humanitarian crises that we saw. There was an incredible effort by a couple of team members over in Australia to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars to provide oxygen in India for COVID patients who just didn't have access to ventilators and oxygen in India. So I think I'm incredibly proud of the efforts that are made, not just to our partners and our customers, but to the wider hospitality industry and the world itself. I think we try to do a lot around supporting hoteliers financially, supporting them with flexibility around contracts, trying to develop fast some of the facilities that they needed as well. So SiteMinder has a hotel app store, very similar to yourselves, which is, how do you bring in the right tools flexibly for the hotel to meet their needs for today and tomorrow. So we were really keen to try and enhance the flexibility we had within our technology as well.
Yes, definitely. Super interesting. And I think we've all learned a lot this past year and have all grown personally and professionally as a result. Carla, thank you so much for your time today. It was an absolute pleasure. I learned a lot. I'm sure our audience did. Maor, thank you as well for being here with us and teaching us about the Guesty SiteMinder integration. I do want to invite all of you to RSVP to our next virtual meetup, Embracing the Short-Term Rental Tech Boom, on Thursday, September 23rd. You can see it on our event list. And I would like to thank Carla and Maor again. Thank you for being with us. If you wanted to ask a question, didn't get to it, you can send a question at meetup@guesty.com. We'll be sure to respond or send it to Carla and she will respond to your additional questions. And we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Carla, it was super interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.